This is my slideshow, I Have a Dream by Emily Saunders. When the audience of a written piece of literature or a speech reads a speech, they don't really get to see the reactions of others around them. An example of this is if you are listening to a speech and one person starts clapping and they start a big applause, then everybody starts clapping, and this is just one reaction that makes other people's react. I know when I read, sometimes I read things wrong and I don't notice until later, and I'm thinking, this doesn't make sense, and it's because I read it wrong. If somebody's not as strong as a reader, they might read it wrong and think it said something totally different, and it completely changes the meaning of the speech. Reading is always easier to misinterpret things than listening, and reading it might not affect you as much if you aren't really put into that room or that situation where you're really listening and getting involved in the speech. The audience of a spoken speech can get a better feel of the speaker's emotion. You can actually hear how the speaker wants the words and everything to be interpreted and how they want it to come out and come across to the audience. The reactions around the listeners may also affect your reaction to the speech, just like I said earlier with the applause. And it's easier to get more intrigued and involved in the speech or get taken by it if you're listening to the speaker firsthand. It would be a lot harder to misinterpret a spoken speech unless you just didn't hear something right. As I said before, passion. Like anything else, reading can be misinterpreted easily. Listening to a speech can be much more intriguing, hearing what the speaker exaggerates and points he really stresses to get across. You can hear all the ups and downs in his voice and his tones as he's speaking and building up to the real message of his speech. The context of a speech is really important. A speech can be anywhere from the Washington Memorial in D.C. to a classroom to a rally. When a speech is spoken for a special occasion, the context is usually really on point. On the other hand, if you were just reading a speech that is meant to be somewhere really drastic and you're just laying down reading it in your room, you might not have the same effect as really being there. When someone may read a speech, it might not be completely effective because it wasn't in the right context. There are some similarities to spoken and written speeches. Both can get you familiar with the subject that the speaker is trying to get across the speech, even if you might not get the total message of what the speaker was trying to say. And both either have a positive or negative effect on you based on what your opinion is of the speech. There's many pros to a spoken speech, but hearing a spoken word always has more of an impact on an audience if you do have a strong speaker and if it is in context to where the speech is taking place. It's always more impacting than just reading it for themselves out of a book or wherever they may read it from. Listening to the Martin Luther King speech was very interesting. The more I listened to it, the more into it and interesting it got to listen to. He used really strong speaking techniques, and he spoke in different tones at different points, and this really helped him get his point across of what he wanted to exaggerate. He built up the excitement of the speech sort of like a book, how you build and build and build and finally you get to the climax, which was the biggest possible effect on the audience, and he made this the most interesting to get his point across. That is the end of my slide.